Hey everyone, I'm here with my good friend Mark. We went to USC together. He majored in finance and cybersecurity, and he was one of the first friends of mine to tell me about Bitcoin, blockchain, smart contracts. And I consider him an expert in this subject because he led cybersecurity consulting for Ernst Young for a few years. And he led research and did reports on emerging coins and emerging blockchain technologies such as Ripple, Ethereum, Stellar, these types of projects when they were just being born, and did a lot of research as to how they could be applied to an enterprise or consumer level application use case. Anyhow, he's taught me a lot. It's still a very, very difficult space to learn, even though everyone seems to have a grasp of what Bitcoin and blockchain is. But I really want to take the time for Mark to explain in his own words what is this technology and what's the application of it. So Mark, please tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience and what you're working on now.
Sure. So thanks, Andrew. So pretty much, as Andrew mentioned, I'm co-founder of a cybersecurity startup called Netcloak. And what we're trying to do is remove high-risk public data from the internet. Now, our first use case is helping companies protect themselves from social engineering attacks that target individual employees. We eventually see this growing to impact everybody. And this ties back into the crypto space, and one of the reasons I talked to Andrew a fair bit is that some of the concept of privacy and risks around publicly available data are very salient for anybody in crypto, as you guys know very well about SIM swapping, potential ransom attacks, and spear phishing and the like. So we went through that. So, kind of that's what I'm doing now. And as Andrew mentioned previously, I used to be a consultant with Ernst & Young. And one of the things I did before I left the firm to start my own company was I co-authored EY's first thought leadership paper on blockchain security. So I've been in the space for a fair bit, seen a lot of ideas get tossed around, and also seen how people from both individuals all the way up to Fortune 500 companies have thought about it and kind of the shortcomings that they've run into.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. So we're going to keep this short, let's say 20 minutes, and we're going to talk more high level on blockchain and crypto as a whole. So what is blockchain in your own words?
So I think that to me, blockchain is essentially a computing system that arose out of a need to conduct transactions with digital assets in untrusted, hostile environments. So what that really means is that really all a blockchain is it's just a list of transactions between multiple parties that can't be edited or altered by individuals. So that it's the popular word is immutable, so it's just an immutable ledger that everybody can have access to. So everybody can see what everyone else was doing, but nobody knows who that was, and they are 100% confident that what they see on that ledger is in fact true.
It's a great way to put it. Smart contracts. If you say this word, you sound smart. But what are smart contracts?
Sure. A smart contract to me is just it's a fancy agreement that is essentially, it's just like any agreement that you can make with one of your friends. You agree to give somebody, I agree to give Andrew a cup of coffee tomorrow, and in exchange Andrew will give me coffee coin. And what a smart contract is, it's just a way to formalize that agreement, but instead of there having to be an individual third party to kind of act as the intermediary to make sure we do that, it's pre-programmed in. So once Andrew validates that I in fact gave him coffee, or I say that I gave Andrew coffee, we just have we have a technology contract that just will automatically execute and make sure we're both made whole. So it's just it's technology-enabled escrow agreements.
Following on this concept of smart contracts, do you think it's good for only a transfer of value type agreements, or what other types of triggers or contractual agreements could this work for? Like, for example, is a smart contract good for when you log into Instagram? Could that be run by a smart contract? Or is it better for if I'm making payments for a car or a home, or buying a home or car?
Yeah, sure. So I think that definitely those latter use cases are kind of those first order derivatives that will need to get conquered first in order for people to have trust that this is something that can be used outside of just a traditional financial transaction. But I think that smart contracts, and the way to think about all crypto really, is that it's just a way to make sure that two people can exchange assets. And assets aren't financial. On the social network example, right? Exchanging my credentials with Instagram to log in, that could be considered an exchange of asset. Or just posting on somebody else's account could be an exchange of asset. So I think that anytime you have a situation where two parties need to ensure that, two parties have a deal and they need to ensure that both sides stay true to that deal and nobody tries to screw the other, then a smart contract could have play. But
yeah, with all the innovation happening in the blockchain space, people are calling this the Internet of Value, or they're calling it Web 3.0. Which word do you like better, and why?
So I think that if I had to pick between those two,
yes,
I would go with Web 3.0. I don't think Internet of Value necessarily makes sense because I think as we're seeing, there's value is a very subjective word, whereas Web 3.0, it's kind of you can describe what you want to it. And the reason I think that it is applicable is that the way computing and really any type of architecture, the way the internet is set up, is it's a network for people to interact with each other. All of those interactions theoretically could be placed on a blockchain. Whether or not they should from a computationally expensive reason, that's a totally different discussion. But theoretically, anytime you have a discussion, could be an application or blockchain. Whether or not you should, user experience question, computationally expensive question. But that's why I think Web 3.0 is appropriate.
There's one more terminology for crypto innovation, and it's user-owned web, as Olaf from Polychain famously called it on Bloomberg and other interviews. Do you think that's fitting, or is it vague? Or
I think that could be fitting. I think that the one impediment I would see to that is that, and this kind of depending on where you sit on the, ideological debate of crypto, is I think user-owned web will be very challenging to ever achieve unless there's a universally agreed upon sort of single blockchain or single coin that people want to transact in. And the reason I say that is if I have to come up with, dozens of different coins to use dozens of different websites, that's going to be, as a user, I'm going to hate that, and I don't want to have to manage all of them. It's already a pretty big barrier to entry in the crypto space today, is how do you create a user interface where somebody can manage coins, or for non-token based blockchain applications, your average end user doesn't want to manage their wallet. So you have to overcome that challenge, and I think having each individual source create its own coin would be a huge barrier to user adoption.
Great thoughts. Now let's bring it back to just more simple questions.
Sure.
Your thoughts on Bitcoin, and you've been an early discoverer and person that's curious about it for quite some time. I remember you were curious about it when we were in undergrad at USC.
Yeah, 2010 was when I first kind of got into it.
So thoughts on Bitcoin since then and now, and what do you think of it as an investment thesis as well as impactful technology? What are your thoughts on just Bitcoin?
Sure. So I think extremely impactful technology. As a product, I think really what you kind of see is that, to me, the original thesis behind Bitcoin was the premium for Bitcoin was, okay, I want to conduct a transaction in an untrusted, hostile environment. So the premium I would pay for a Bitcoin, the reason I would buy a Bitcoin would be that, I would like to pay this premium to conduct anonymously in an untrusted environment. And that's why I bought it. And that was the original use case. And that's why you saw people were buying pizzas with Bitcoins and other stuff, because back then it was super cheap. And 2010 onwards, it was 2010 to 2012, it wasn't too expensive. Then as it became more of a speculative vehicle, which I think that it's sort of become, you saw that the value proposition that people had for Bitcoin was that they thought that it was kind of this bellwether of blockchain technology. So whether or not that is true to the average person, to the lay person who doesn't really understand blockchain, they'll always associate it with Bitcoin. So I think now you kind of look at Bitcoin as something that moves in relation to market sentiment about blockchain technology as a whole.
I think a lot of newcomers to blockchain, they get excited about it because the price goes in a straight line during some bull markets, and you buy into it. And you probably buy into it a little bit too early before you understand what it is. But luckily, maybe the moving price is somewhat of a viral sort of way to get people to learn about this. In addition, we have educational materials, people writing books, big YouTubers providing education around Bitcoin. But do you think most folks buy it before they learn about it, or do they learn about it then buy it?
Oh, I think that the best way to excite anybody about anything is tell them that they can get rich doing it, or tell them they can make money doing it. Whether or not that's a altruistic reason, I think human nature is greed. And I think that, unfortunately, there have been a lot of instances of that in crypto. So I think that when you see kind of that bull market, you have, everybody remembers grandma around the dinner table being like, at Thanksgiving, asking, what about this Bitcoin? How do I go into it? Thinking it's kind of going to be a retirement fund. So yeah. I think it's a great way to get people excited during the bull market, and hopefully they stay for the technology.
That's a good point. And network effect. This is a term made popular by Peter Thiel. The value of a product gets better and better as more people use it. Arguably with Facebook and Instagram, Yelp, a lot of these tech companies achieve massive economies of scale through network effects. Is that the case with Bitcoin? It eats your savings account. More people put their savings in Bitcoin. Technically, that should create scarcity and make the price only go up. Do you think the network effect of Bitcoin has started, or are we going to see impending doom any minute's time?
So I think that crypto as a whole, and kind of blockchain as a whole, is definitely benefiting and has benefited tremendously from that network effect. I think that you've reached sort of that critical mass where you've got enough very talented people working in the space that you're going to start seeing some really fantastic innovation. I actually am a fan of the bear market, because you're going to see a lot of the people that got into blockchain purely to make a quick buck get filtered out. You're going to see a lot of the crappy projects die because they only made sense when everything made sense. And I think what's going to stick around and grow are going to be those foundational technologies like, the Amazons, Googles, and of the .com bubble.
Yeah, great that you're overall optimistic for the space and not really denouncing it, which is, very valid. I mean, it's too early to kind of reject, but kind of not late enough to really know in hindsight what infrastructure is going to need to be absolutely critical. I mean, for sure, scalable transactions, affordable computation costs for these use cases, as well as entrepreneurs building use cases that are mainstream on top of blockchain, are all things that we need to see. Would you agree? Yeah,
I think that Kevin Zhang from Upfront Ventures had a very interesting comment during their summit about a year ago, where he had people go around in a room, and he said, okay, great. So everybody remembers the internet before the .com boom, right? Everybody that was alive in the 90s, how many people used the internet? Or how many people had heard of the internet? Entire room raises their hand. Okay, how many people, had an email account? Like 75% of the room raised their hand. He said, okay, how many people used it every day? 50% raised their hand. So, he said, okay, that was the internet then. And he said, okay, well, how about blockchain? How many people here have heard about blockchain and crypto? Everyone raises their hand. Okay, how many people own blockchain or crypto? Half the room raises its hand. Okay, how many of you use a blockchain application or crypto in your day-to-day life that's not trading, that's not speculative? Nobody raises their hand. So I think what that shows you is that we're kind of entering the hangover phase from that, is that there are a lot of people speculating in the space, but nobody actually using the product. As you know, from being an entrepreneur, What you need is people actually using your product to show success.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the reason I'm optimistic about this space, and I think there's a lot of opportunity, is we haven't yet hit that critical mass of 50% of the people raising their hand saying, yeah, I'm using blockchain in my day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. And you can see the internet in the 90s, like half the people were using the internet then, and we've had massive growth in internet-enabled products in the past 20 years. Blockchain isn't even at that stage yet. So I think there's massive future potential.
On the subject of Bitcoin, does it have any fundamental or intrinsic value, owning one or two or however many?
Sure. I mean, it's a way you can transact. You can conduct a transaction anonymously in a hostile environment. And I think there's that, and also just from a purely just enjoying technology perspective, it's I don't want to say fun thing to own, but it's a way. It's getting a piece of the first example of a new type of technology architecture, which is really impressive. So I think it's good.
Despite the price crashing and rising and crashing and rising, crashing, it fundamentally is the same network, not broken.
Yeah, I think that Bitcoin is the Bitcoin network is doing what it's supposed to do. You've got people that are like trying to figure out the Lightning network. You've got a lot of people trying to make derivatives off of it, but fundamentally, it's the same. The technology hasn't changed. So if you like the technology, hold the technology. If you like the speculative vehicle, find a speculative vehicle that matches your risk profile.
Yeah, great, straight. So you have your own startup. You're hiring. How competitive it is to recruit, interested engineers. A lot of folks say Ethereum has a head start in creating the #1 network for smart contracts and decentralized computation.
Yep. Because
they're early, because they have a lot of engineers. Do you think that's a good advantage, or do you think it's kind of for the taking for other teams to compete with similar use cases? Ethereum can solve.
I think that I think that it's a huge advantage Ethereum has. I'll say I'm biased. I have a couple friends at Consensus, so I certainly like them, and I certainly like the platform, and I like Ethereum a lot. They kind of innovated quite a few things in the space, but at the end of the day, it's a very early field. I founded my own startup. I think that if you can put together a talented team that's solving a very compelling problem for a specific user base, and you can make your product easy to use, I think you have a chance at succeeding. Now, I'm not saying that means go build your own coin to do that. Maybe EOS, Neo, Ethereum, blockchain platform du jour is more your speed, but I think you can make a pretty good go at it.
Fair point. Fair point. Can't underestimate the productivity and accomplishments a talented team can achieve, whether small or big. Now, I want to save some of the more complicated insights around crypto use cases and diving a bit more into infrastructure, probably on the next conference or podcast. But let's talk high level about, what are some potential use cases for enterprise or consumer level adoption of crypto. You did consulting for Ernst Young. You did consulting for a lot of clients regarding blockchain, which I'm sure is confidential, but that's early years. And a lot of folks are building dApps. There are a lot of dApp hackathons and such. What are your thoughts on, really you can take this in any direction, use cases for crypto? Bitcoin undoubtedly has proven itself that it is a use case as a store of value, that it was censorship resistant, immutable, these kind of words that people are using. But where else could this be used for? You could take it kind of anywhere, but I want to ask you about a few after that.
Sure. So I think that censorship resistance piece is something that's personally interesting to me because I have a privacy startup. I think that the fact that you can create a network or a product that can be distributed among its user base is very powerful. Some of the social network ideas that are around it, I personally haven't heard one I like yet, but I like that people are thinking about the space in that way. I think that as we've seen existing social networks and existing communication channels get hijacked by malicious actors, that there's a need to build a malicious actor resistant social network as well as news channel. So I think that there's a pretty good use case there, especially if you figure out a way to compensate people through native tokens to post quality content, or just as a way to vote negative actors out of the system. I think that'd be powerful. In terms of, but that mixes. So that's like consumer, enterprise. I would say that any enterprise that has to conduct transactions with other organizations that are absolutely critical to be 100% accurate and validated. Blockchain's a great way to do that. I think smart contracts are going to have a lot of enterprise use cases that are in heavily asset transaction-based industries. Financial services, real estate, those are definitely getting hammered pretty hard. I think somebody's going to crack the nut there pretty soon here. Going back to just pure fun consumer, so we'll get out of altruism, we'll get out of the concept of privacy, asset ownership, we'll get into something that's close to me is gaming, which I know you've had a couple thoughts on that.
Yes, yeah, games. You're quite a gamer yourself, so you understand what it's like to play games. Like, how can they use blockchain?
Sure. So I think that the reason for me games are a very compelling place to figure out a way to use blockchain is that games are inherently a digital asset native environment. You're used to trading assets in game. You look at Counter-Strike, trading skins, PUBG, all those other games. There's a huge third-party economy around trading cosmetics. I think that's a great way to make it happen. And then also just from purely selfish perspective, any game that was serviced by a central online server, if that company goes under or that company decides it no longer wants to service that community and they take that server down, those players have very limited options to play the game. So I think a distributed game, a game that's distributed amongst its user base, has a lot of longevity and is something that can grow for years and years to come, because it's never at risk of being shut down, which is always a big risk. If you're a gamer, you don't want to invest time and money into something that EA or another company could pull the plug on tomorrow.
That's true. I didn't think of that as well. What about the aspect of NFTs, non-fungible tokens, digital content on blockchain? Do you think this enables people have already sold and resold their digital goods, as you mentioned in some
CryptoKitties?
Yeah, CryptoKitties, as well as World of Warcraft as well. Do you think NFTs can help enable the commerce and exchange of assets, or is this not really something that's that exciting about blockchain?
I think it facilitates it.
Yeah.
Whether or not, I think that the main thing is that it has to be easy to use. It has to occur natively within the game for that to be successful.
Yeah.
There's something, online games have always struggled with counterfeiting items, people scamming other players for those items, and that sort of thing. And those are problems that have been endemic to the online space for a while. I think non-fungible tokens definitely can solve that if they're implemented in a user-friendly way.
Got it.
But as a user, you certainly don't want to have to log out of the game and access your wallet with you don't want to access a hardware wallet to get, to trade items in game.
Yeah, people are forgetting that the crypto community is relatively very, 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 very small. There's less than 5,000 DApp users a day on Ethereum, and the majority of that are games. CryptoKitties itself probably hit five figures in daily active users, and now it's much, much, much less. I personally think that for crypto use cases to be popular, they have to be, taking the benefits of blockchain, but not forcing the user to download MetaMask, download a wallet on their phone, and go through all these loopholes. Or at least if it does make them go through loopholes, like the value has to be there or the UX has to be simple enough. So these are all problems to solve, right? If you're kind of building in the space and being a pioneer.
Yeah, I think that the biggest mistake that I see, and I've talked to, so I've got a Techstars t-shirt on as I'm talking to Andrew. I went through the Techstars Accelerator class in Los Angeles this year. And as a result, I've talked to a lot of other entrepreneurs as well as aspiring entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing that I think is the largest risk I've seen in the crypto community and the blockchain community is kind of hostile user interface or user experience, in that you have a lot of blockchain designers that assume they're designing for other crypto addicts, other people that are extremely enthusiastic and passionate about the space.
Yeah.
And that might work a little bit, but if you truly want it to be successful and you truly want to grow your business, you need to make it so simple for somebody to get into it, and you almost want to make it so somebody doesn't have to think about that there's a blockchain driving your product. Like, just that they don't have to think about wallets, they don't have to think about key management, like all these technical terms that we're throwing around. You don't want somebody to have to understand that. You just literally want somebody to be able to download what you've built and just go. And I think that kind of mentality hasn't yet pervaded the crypto space. I think you've got a lot of people that are trying to design stuff that appeals to other extremely early adopters with no sense of how to scale it for a broader user base, which does the space a disservice.
Right. So overall, good place to be an entrepreneur, right? Blockchain is relatively very early and experimental. Still lots of a blue ocean, I think, in terms of infrastructure, use cases, adoption. I'll save it for next time.
Of course.
It's great asking you all sorts of questions because you usually have ideas and feedback, whatever question I ask you. Anything else you want to comment on or anything else that you want to say? Your website is netcloak.io, right?
Yeah. Our website's netcloak.io. Happy to, if you want to email me, I think my email address is marc@netcloak.io. And if you have questions about online privacy or anything like that, always feel free to reach out.
Netcloak, netcloak.io. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mark. I'm so happy we recorded one of these conversations. Usually we just chat over lunch. If you have any questions for Mark, maybe we can gather them and put it on the next time we chat with him. So thanks again. It's always a pleasure.
Fantastic.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. Looking forward to the next one.
You're welcome. Thank you.